He's having, I think, a complete rethink about Putin. I think Putin worries him because it takes somebody who trades on being mercurial. He's finding this rigid imperial nationalist across the Urals being absolutely quite unpredictable now, and that would annoy him because it annoys, it upsets what he does best, what he feels Donald Trump thinks is his strong suit, which is making deals.
My view is that the US intervention was necessary and will be judged well when the history of it all is written. You know, the I was in Singapore the other week for the Shangri-La dialogue, and it was really striking that whilst in the sort of mainstream commentariat, all of the comment was around what Trump wasn't doing in Ukraine, what Trump wasn't doing in Gaza, what Trump wasn't doing uh, in over China and Taiwan. Um, but actually, President Macron, who gave the keynote speech, made the point 3 times that on limiting a new round of nuclear proliferation, Donald Trump's administration was doing exactly the right thing. And I think it was quite telling because that, of all the things the world faces right now, a new round of nuclear proliferation is by far the worst. And therefore, on that, Trump is right to have intervened. The question I have, though, Robert, is will he continue to intervene until he is absolutely satisfied that the capability is completely destroyed? Or do you think he now sits back and waits to see what happens over the next few months, perhaps a new round of nuclear negotiations?
I don't think there can be any sitting back. I want to make an observation. I think you've been cheating. You've been reading the copy that I've written for the Eye for this weekend, and it is precise. And it is precisely that. I'm sorry, Times Radio. It's not for the Times, but it's explaining why. It's the apprehension about how we are on the threshold of another nuclear arms race as to why Trump is acting, and also why Keir Starmer is acting in the way it must be said. That is a given. James, I'm going back to your military career now. They're having difficulty, and they always knew they would, with BDA, with battle damage analysis. How do you get in there? How can you be absolutely sure? And I think there will have to be a human operation, particularly with the two sites I've mentioned, Natanz and Fordor, because they had extensive deep underground, in the case of Fordor, facilities there. I think the facilities, the halls are still there, but the material is gone. By the way, that's why they sent the Tomahawks again and again into Isfahan, because they think that was another storage point. Just to say anecdotal, because it's absolutely up there. You can see it on satellite, on YouTube, and so on. There was a very suspicious convoy of trucks going away from Fordor about 3 or 4 days before a midnight hammer. I think there's a question of time. Time is not on anybody's side here. And I think that is something that Trump's entourage, and it's beginning to be very interesting to see who they are. He's still got his buddy Witkoff there, and Witkoff will still be played. I think he's got a new arrangement with his chiefs of staff, and I think that they're working very closely together. And I think their risk analysis is particularly good. The one area that he's for Trump, it's quite something because it's very quiet, unusual for Trump, but he's having, I think, a complete rethink about Putin. I think Putin worries him because it takes somebody who trades on being mercurial. He's finding this rigid imperial nationalist across the Urals being absolutely quite unpredictable now, and that would annoy him because it annoys, it upsets what he does best, what he feels Donald Trump thinks is his strong suit, which is making deals. What he wants now, he wants to firm up the deals where the money is, where the interest is, and it's namely that part of the Arabian world. It's the UAE, Qatar, but above all Saudi Arabia, and he wants to work on that. And if Putin and Ukraine is seen to be upsetting that equilibrium, and I think that's the way the algebra is working now, hence this rather cool, and Trump can never admit that he was wrong, but gently opening up to Zelensky again. They're not going to have US military aid at the scale before, but it looks to me as if Trump is offering aid in quality. By that, he's not said no, double negative, I know, to sending more Patriots, and Patriots are scarce. Now, that really is quite something. The change of mood music from the meeting at the Vatican at the Pope's funeral through to the NATO summit, it's a very different thing. We're with NATO, we're with European NATO, and we are not turning away from Ukraine. But Ukraine must not think America is in the lead of NATO's effort for support. Get on with it, Europe. And that was the big headline from the Hague summit. But there is a big change, and there is a very subtle change in the subsequent 200 or 250 days of the Trump second presidency.
It's obvious that Israel are wanting more than just regime change here. I was fascinated by your assessment of a heavy Mossad presence already in Iran, allied with opposition groups, and the route that brings to civil war. Do you think anybody will stand in Netanyahu's way of driving regime change?
I think the Americans will be quietly saying, very un-Trump-like, as one of the advisors to Blair said in 2003, Cambridge professor expert on Iraqi affairs, look before you leap, Prime Minister. And I think that that's what the Americans are saying, because there you're absolutely right. You get it even in the liberal press that Bibi Netanyahu comes up and says, let's have regime change. Trump is saying no, but Trump is trying to save Netanyahu at the moment. To what end, I am not sure. Because the one thing that Trump, it sounds odd to say it, Trump doesn't like wars, and he doesn't like gratuitous violence, peculiarly. And he is such a complex character, despite all his bluntness and his brazen and rather crude language. I don't think he wants things like the West Bank to continue, as well as Gaza. He doesn't like it. They upset the order. And it's very interesting now how Putin, by the way, is denying Iran and saying, I've got to pay attention to Israel. Because, did you see this just the other day, 2 days ago? I've got to pay attention to the fact that there are 2 million Russian speakers, Russians, in fact, or Russian Jews, not even Jews, some of them, living in Israel as Israeli citizens now. That's very interesting. But going back to regime change, and I think it's where the Americans absolutely understand it, there's no replacement. America has learnt the lesson the way the Brits were completely seduced, you may remember, in 2002, 2003, by a man called Ahmed Chalabi, who was a bit of a chancer, and he was the head of the so-called Iraqi National Congress. And he persuaded, I had senior generals, I had people attached to the intelligence service. Oh, he's got a replacement. He can completely replace the command of the Iraqi forces. They'll come over, they'll form a government, and look what happened. There was nothing there. And they know that they've got the same problem. The Shah's son is saying, I can do it. Very, very few believe it. And what is fascinating, he is not getting much traction at the court of Donald Trump.
Well, look, let's talk about The Hague. Was it a PR masterstroke from Rutte to call Trump daddy, or is that the infantilization of the world's major defense and security alliance?
The trouble is that they're rather similar in their language. We haven't parsed this one, but, I thought the pointy heads of the Times columnists should have done it. The way the Dutch speak English. And I've suffered from this for over 50 years. My wife is Dutch, and we have Dutch. And it's the kind of bluntness. By the way, they're excellent linguists. The Dutch, as you probably know, of all the major European countries, have the highest number of English speakers, and much to their chagrin, because even a lot of certainly their scientific work and certainly their business work, and a lot of their academic work is done in English. They are absolutely terrific. But the way it comes across, I'm closing my eyes, they have the bluntness at times and the in-your-faceness that even Geoffrey Boycott might admire. You know, it's sort of Nordic Yorkshire that they're doing. And I've just listened to the rhythms of Rutte's language. This man is a skilled politician at dealing with coalitions and factions. And that is what he is doing. He worked it out from the beginning as Mark Rutte, was taking up office. This is the guy, this is the daddy I've really got to work with. If I can't make NATO work with Trump, and Trump walks away from us, it's no good. Because if you have a completely European structure, a phase two, as it were, as the Europeans and the EU at times seem to be preparing in NATO. Look, James, from your time in the army, they can't do it. The structure isn't there. You know, the kind of stuff that you get at Mons, the way that they organize, everything from battle groups to brigades to divisions. And we've seen it. We've seen it in the Balkans, and we've seen that they had to give the structure in Afghanistan. Now, Mark Rutte, who's not a military man, but, oh boy, what a card-playing politician, absolutely understands that. And to that extent, he has got, he is wooing daddy. You know, if Trump likes it, then it's so good. And the thing is that he quite clearly started a very fruitful dialogue with Trump back in, not long after Trump was elected, saying, now, yeah, I know what you want, boss. I've got to get Europe to deliver. And it's really a pact between Mark Rutte and Donald Trump that has got us to 5%, which is a sort of ludicrous Alice in Wonderland figure in 2035. Actually, what they should be asking Starmer, Macron, and Chancellor Scholz, what are you going to do in the next 18 months? Because you might need it if Russia goes heavy on its expansionist rhetoric.